In the 1980s, Japanese businessmen paid for $600 sushi with corporate expense accounts. They sprinkled gold flakes on their coffee. They bought up art by Van Gogh and Renoir. 10 years later, their children were shopping at 100 yen stores. They were living with their parents into their 30s. They were called the lost generation. How did the world's most confident economy fall so fast? It started not with a crash, but with a handshake. In 1985, at the Plaza Hotel in New York, the world's financial leaders made a deal. The Plaza Accord. Its goal was to rebalance global trade in America's favor. This meant intentionally weakening the US dollar, making American products much cheaper to sell around the world.
Throat goes dry.
But for Japan, this deal was a spark that lit an economic wildfire. The Japanese yen surged in value, making their exports suddenly expensive. To avoid a recession, the Bank of Japan did something fateful. It slashed interest rates, flooding the country with cheap, easy money. This easy money needed to go somewhere. It found its home in a powerful national delusion, the land myth. The unshakable belief that in crowded Japan, land prices could only ever go up. A speculative fever gripped the nation. Companies stopped building factories. They started playing the market. It was called Zeitek, or financial engineering. And it was simple. Borrow billions, buy stocks and real estate, and wait. The mania reached absurd heights. The Nikkei stock index more than doubled in just 2 years. The land under the Imperial Palace in Tokyo was valued at more than all of California. Japan, it seemed, was invincible. But the Bank of Japan saw the terrifying threat hiding beneath the wealth. They feared runaway inflation, a scenario where the price of everything from bread to cars spirals out of control, where money itself becomes worthless. So in 1989, they slammed the brakes. Interest rates were hiked again and again. The cheap money disappeared, and the bubble, stretched to its absolute limit, finally met the pin. The Tokyo stock market didn't just fall, it evaporated. In 1 year, more than $2 trillion in value vanished into thin air. The Great Fall had begun. But a crash is one thing. What followed wasn't a normal recession, it was something far stranger and far more terrifying. A sickness that would cripple the nation for a decade to come. The fatal problem was how companies had used the easy money of the 80s. They hadn't borrowed to build new factories or invent new products. They had borrowed billions purely to gamble on the skyrocketing prices of stocks and real estate. So when the bubble burst, the value of those assets evaporated overnight, but the mountains of debt they took on to buy them, that remained. This left thousands of companies effectively bankrupt. In a healthy economy, they would have been allowed to fail, a process called creative destruction, allowing new, innovative companies to rise from the ashes. But in Japan, something different happened. The banks that held all this debt were also on the brink of collapse. If their borrowers failed, they would fail too. So, to save themselves, the banks made a perverse choice. They kept lending just enough money to these broken companies to let them pay the interest on their old loans. They weren't truly alive. They couldn't invest, or hire, or grow. But they weren't officially dead either. They became the walking dead of the economy. Zombie companies. And for 10 years, these zombies haunted Japan. They tied up money and workers that could have been used by healthy businesses. They strangled any chance of a real recovery. At the same time, the Japanese people, seeing this chaos, did what any rational person would do. They stopped spending. They were so worried about the future that they started hoarding cash. This created another problem. A strange phenomenon called deflation, where prices don't rise, they fall. This sounds good, but it's an economic poison. It creates a twisted incentive to wait. Why buy something today when it will be cheaper tomorrow? The economy was now caught in a liquidity trap. It's like trying to start a flooded car engine. The central bank was pumping fuel, in this case, money, into the system. But the engine wouldn't turn over. The spark of confidence was gone. This vicious cycle, zombie companies and terrified consumers, was the engine of the lost decade. But behind these economic theories were millions of real people. A generation forced to navigate a broken world, and the story of how they adapted, how they hustled, is where the true lesson begins. The economic winter didn't just freeze bank accounts. It changed the very soul of Japanese society. The extravagant, confident, salaryman culture of the 80s was gone. In its place, a new ethos was forged. One of thrift, resilience, and quiet adaptation. The most visible symbol of this new reality was the 100 yen shop. Before the crash, discount stores were seen as dreary and cheap. But now a company called Daiso turned frugality into a national pastime. They framed shopping there not as a defeat, but as a smart treasure hunt. Using massive bulk orders, they sold quality goods for an unbeatable price. And the public flocked to them. Saving money was no longer embarrassing. It was respectable. It was a skill. This new mindset seeped from the stores into the home. With job security gone and wages stagnating, families needed a way to regain control. Many turned to a century-old budgeting method, the kakebo. The system was simple, but powerful. At the start of the month, you write down your income and your fixed bills. You set a concrete savings goal. Then you track every single yen you spend by hand, sorting it into 4 categories: needs, wants, culture, for things like books, museum visits, or personal enrichment, and unexpected expenses. The physical act of writing everything down created a profound awareness of where money was actually going. In a world of economic chaos, the kakebo was a small pocket of order and control, a way for families to steer their own ship through the storm. But outside the home, the storm was raging. The crisis didn't just break the economy. It broke the most sacred promise of Japan's modern success: lifetime employment. The social contract that guaranteed a loyal employee a job for life was shattered. To survive, corporations were forced to cut costs and become more flexible. The high expenses of lifetime employment, pensions, bonuses, and guaranteed job security were a luxury they could no longer afford. So they stopped hiring for permanent careers. Instead, they turned to a cheaper, more flexible workforce. An army of non-regular workers, part-timers, temporary staff, and contract employees. This gave rise to a new social class, the Freeder, a name blending the English word free with the German word for worker. But their life was anything but free. It was a life of instability. Lower wages, no bonuses, no health insurance, and no pension. Job security became a story their parents told, not a reality they lived. Unable to afford to live on their own, many continued living with their parents well into their 30s. They were labeled with the stinging term parasite singles. This period, from the early 90s to the early 2000s, became known as the employment ice age. Missing the one hiring window right after university could mean a life sentence of precarious work. This created a lost generation that carries the scars of the recession to this day. Now in their 40s and 50s, many have never held a stable, well-paying job. This has led to a tragic social crisis known as the 80-50 problem, where elderly parents in their 80s are still the only financial support for their unemployed, middle-aged children in their 50s. This generation, denied the path of their parents, was forced to write an entirely new playbook for survival. But were these lessons in frugality and hustling just for them? Or do they hold a warning and a solution for all of us today? So where does this story leave us? This is not a simple tale of triumph. The 80-50 problem is proof that for many, the economic winter never truly ended. This was a generation permanently scarred by a crisis they did not create. Yet the lessons we must learn from them are not about victory. These lessons are about resilience. Take the kakebo. For many, it wasn't a tool to get rich. It was a weapon against the feeling of powerlessness, a way to reclaim a small piece of control when all the big forces were pushing them down. And the shift to precarious work was not a side hustle revolution to celebrate. It was a harsh reality. But it teaches us a brutal lesson about the modern illusion of job security. The story of the lost generation is a powerful warning. It shows us what happens when people are forced to learn about budgeting and self-reliance during a crisis instead of before. The specific tools they use to endure are what we must now study to protect ourselves. To go deeper on the kakebo system and the other financial strategies that emerged from this era and how you can apply them to build a foundation of security that many in the lost generation never had, check out my Substack. If you like the channel and want to see more videos like this, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the History of Hustle. See you next time.